paralyzed by fear. I'm clutching you so tight, afraid to lose. I retreat more each night. Where is my voice? I've muted myself, and in my shyness, it's you I repel. I will find my way to express my voice. I must find my way to ignite my spark. Find my way to me so we can be we. Find my way. The fractures between us rise into view. I cling to the scraps of the care that falls through. Where is my strength? I've crumbled apart, hiding from the truth. I've shattered my heart, but I will find my way to regain my strength. I must find my way to restore my will. Find a way to me so we can be we. Find my way. Here is this moment to take a chance, to go on alone or grow and advance. I will find my way to express my voice. I must find my way to ignite my spark. Find my way to me so we can be we. Find my way. I will find my way to regain my strength. I must find my way to restore my will. Find my way to me so we can be we. Find my way. Find my way. I'll find my way.
Happy Sunday, everyone. Thank you for finding your way to Sunday Live, where we bring you new artists and musicians every week and give them a chat over. And you can ask questions too and post it in the chat room, which is open and live on Facebook, on my page, also on the Caleb official YouTube channel and the Audio Terrorist Twitch channel. But before we bring the guest on, let's see what's going on with Joe.
Hey, good evening. How's it going?
Hey, Joe. It's going pretty good. It's actually been warmer. I mean, the fact that I've got my new long johns from Amazon delivery has really changed my life. We got a new comforter on the bed, which is much warmer. But it's actually just not been as cold. We went for an hour and a half walk yesterday. I had to take off the third layer. So we're having a brief a brief moment before winter sets in.
Well, we have a minute heat wave of sorts, variable clouds in East Bay and in the Bay Area. But we have it's gotten warmer the past several days, and it'll be warm for the next several days. There was like an entire hint of rain last evening. It didn't occur, and so it's been pretty mellow. The one thing that's overshadowing us is we're in increased stay-at-home orders from the COVID thing. Pretty much all the counties in the Bay Area have turned from red to purple. So I I'm sporting a brand new haircut, which is not quite 2 hours old, due to the fact that I happen to catch my barber working on a Sunday in Point Richmond, whereupon he advises me, hey, this is the last day. That's why I'm working on a Sunday, because we're going to be closed till January. So I got one in under the wire,
Nice.
and as a result, it's probably looking like Don Henley come January 4th when everything hopefully reopens. But so aside from that, finding new ways of resource for distraction and productivity, and for that matter, creativity, which is largely why we're here, of course.
I have to admit the hour and a half walk hike through the neighborhoods and the hills around here was prompted by a power outage. And that's when I discovered, hey, it's pretty nice out. I should go for a walk, because you talk about distraction and what we're doing. My whole life requires Wi-Fi or a cell phone signal, and mostly Wi-Fi. So when the Wi-Fi goes down and the batteries are at risk of draining, it's kind of like, oh, I should actually go get some exercise.
Yes, it's it's a resource. Doing what you can when you can, getting out after work, riding home having an adventure, riding a moonlight ride through the Berkeley Hills on a bicycle, losing weight and gaining endorphins. Fit that in as a resource. All that in a commute too, to be home at a good hour for reading or whatever whatever's on the menu, shall we say.
Yeah, we had been really good at walking over this last year, and we've been slacking. I've been doing a lot of work for some local bands and a software company. I had just, face locked to the computer. So that was a good reminder. It was like the universe just pulled the plug on me and said, go walk, go do something. Otherwise, you're going to be, 300 pounds by the end of this thing.
Yeah, and as much as I love food, that I'm with you there. You got to take time out to be some you time.
Mm-hmm.
The benefits of which it makes for better productivity when you get back. You're a better
True.
person when the Wi-Fi comes back
True.
on.
And it just you get out with the real world and seeing trees, and there's snow on all the mountains around here, and just get away from staring at a screen thinking that that's reality for a moment. It's very refreshing. Now back in the virtual world, I also did Rock Lotto for Balanced Breakfast. So last night was the DNA Lounge streamed all of our videos yesterday evening on their website. And that was a way for we could do Rock Lotto live. For folks that don't know Rock Lotto, this is with a group called Balanced Breakfast, which is a music community. And once or twice a year, we would have concerts where everybody in the bands were randomized. So you put your name in a hat, you pull out the name, you're in band 6. You might end up in a band with 5 drummers. You might end up in a band with a oboist and a harmonica player, and you make the best of it and you make that work. And it was really good. Every performance I've seen has always been incredibly creative in what comes out. And it was funny. I've never done a comedy. I've never been a part of a comedy song. And it had a seriousness. It had a little bit of COVID action. And that's called Party of One. And it's about being trapped inside and no one wanting to come out. But it was fun and goofy, and that was great to work on. So that was another thing that the technology allowed me to do. And then, of course, this show. So I'm very thankful for the local energy group and keeping the lights on. And I'm also thankful for being reminded to take a break.
Don't you love how the resource of technology and being online and multimedia resources, so with regard to music and electronic arts, it almost brings us back full circle, sort of digital equipment of street corner busking.
Yeah, in some ways, it allows you to have this feeling of local community, immediate interaction. I know certainly Twitch has exploded with busking during COVID. That's led them to having legal issues, but that's another conversation. they yeah, these online shows of which this is a part. There's tons of festivals happening out there. So if you feel that you're getting tired of Netflix and highly polished material, then just realize the internet right now is bursting with opportunities. And folks, if you've never heard of Twitch, go over to Twitch. You'll see people DJing and playing concerts and whatnot. Now, we did all the testing of the audio beforehand and made sure it was 100%. Now, Sharon has said that she can't hear. I don't know why that would be, since we tested this on like 6 computers and it all worked. So let's do a quick sound check before we move on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to bring up the trusty iPhone test. That's where we... I don't know why that would be, since... I hear it fine. Tested this on like 6 computers and it all worked. So let's do a quick sound check before we move on. And I hear Joe. Okay, we're fine. So Sharon, it seems to be on your end. We can hear folks here. So futz around with your computer, double check your computer's volume level, and we're going to soldier on in the meantime. So our guest this week is Adrian West, singer, songwriter, and musician. And I know Adrian through Balanced Breakfast. We're vaguely aware of each other. And Stefan Erison, who's been on an earlier show, said, hey, you should have Adrian on your show. And we've booked him, and he kindly appeared. And now, here's Adrian.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Adrian.
How you doing?
Doing good. How are you holding up out there?
I'm holding up just fine, thank you.
Nice. Are you doing some other internet shows or some distance shows?
I've looked for opportunities to play outdoors, and I've found a couple. There's a winery in Point Richmond that has a nice big outdoor patio, and it's beautiful. It's overlooking the bay. They're called Riggers Loft Winery, and we've played there a couple times. That is coming to an end because of these most recent shutdowns for California, but it was that was an option for a while. And every now and then we would play in a park in Emeryville. We would physically distance from each other, and we would ask people in the park to do the same, and it was all good. And that is sort of how I've been getting my fill. The internet, performing over the internet, I mean, I know there are ways to do that as a group, but generally that has been solo performances, and I just so much enjoy performing with my bandmates that I really look for opportunities to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a very different experience. And folks, when you see those multiple videos and it looks like everybody's singing along together on the internet, it's not real. Mm-hmm. That's all pre-shot and post-production. It is not technically feasible at this time. Everybody would be going out of sync and singing to the exact right rhythm at the exactly wrong time. Right. There are some technologies, like I'm this main show computer, I actually run a cable off the balcony downstairs to the router so that it's hardwired, so we get better bandwidth. And there are some setups that if you are hardwired and you have like one other person you're working with, that they'll create a delay and reset the timing of the video. I explored it early on and still didn't find it capable, but supposedly there's some new builds, and some friends say they're going to test it and get back to me. But I think the reality is you have to be all in the same room one way or the other.
Yeah. So that's how I've been keeping musically active.
And now you're going to go into this next level of lockdown. Can't get in Emeryville, can't get in Point Richmond. What do you do now?
So actually I was spending some time today thinking about that. I have a good 12 or 13 songs that I like, that are, of mine that I like, that aren't recorded really well yet. They're just sort of scratch recordings to allow band members to learn them and stuff like that. So I was just sitting down and thinking, what do I want to do with all of these? And in what order do I want to do it? And do I want to do just audio? Do I want to do videos? And mapping all of that out, bearing in mind that, videos right now, if you can't do a video with a bunch of people in it if they need to be close to each other. So it's a time to get really thinking out of the box, outside of the box. And I have some ideas. I think some of them I'm not going to reveal yet because I think that would ruin the surprise. But there's just a lot of different things to weigh right now. There's, like what I just said, what kind of video can you actually make? But also, where are we today in terms of releasing music and releasing videos? Does the album still exist? Is the album still a thing that matters? Do people really listen to just audio tracks, or are they just so more interested in videos that might as well just focus on putting out videos, even if it's just, artistically done lyric videos? There's a lot of stuff to weigh, and I'm spending a good chunk of this morning weighing it all. Don't have any solid answers yet, but that's what's going on.
Got it. I hear you. For my own work, and I manage a couple bands and as a consultant, and we're constantly engaging on these topics about what should we do at this time and the right routing. With Martial Law Band up here in Seattle, they've been doing some travel and shoots where there's social distancing and getting some material and producing music videos that way. They also got a generator. Well, they'd gotten a generator for when the CHOP protests happened here, because they ended up putting up a stage where community leaders could talk, and the band became like the house band on the corner of the street. And then they did an album about that experience, and they decided to purchase a flatbed to put behind an SUV that would become a mobile stage.
Nice.
So they've been going into different neighborhoods and communities and performing live on the street and bringing music to folks. And they also tie this in. Well, they'll be tying this in again in December with a clothing drive where they collect clothing for folks that don't have clothes. They're either homeless or in shelters and whatnot, and they need supplies. So they're gathering supplies, let them sit for a certain amount of time so they can distribute them safely. And then they're, planning this mobile tour to be in folks' neighborhood to share their music with them. So
that sounds great. That sounds great.
It's time to really be thinking about breaking the mold all you can. And they're just firing on they're very inspired lead singer. The drummer's extremely motivated, and they got some coverage with CNN over their performance during the protests and the local Fox channel because of the mobile thing. So they're working during this time, but I think that's pretty unusual. Most people are doing live shows online with the tip jar, drop a PayPal donation, or Venmo donation during the show. I see a lot of venues are doing that. Come by, pick up a cocktail to go, and watch us online. A couple times when it's been allowed, some bands have been able to be on stage, and you could film that, or you could pre-film, send it to them. There's a show, Star Crash, that DNA Lounge broadcasts, where they take music video submissions and live video submissions from artists, and their theme is kind of like a retro 80s thing, where we have these like 1970s call-in to donate your money commercials, but like old industrial stuff blended in with different artist stuff. So it has a very 80s art school vibe going. So highly recommend Star Crash, folks. Check it out.
I'll check that out.
Well, speaking of videos and performance, you have a Tiny Desk. I think this one's the Tiny Desk one, the one-way pony ride.
It was not submitted to Tiny Desk, but it's similar to one that was.
Okay. Well, let's watch that video, and then we'll be right back.
Cool.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Dude's running in the rain, trying to catch the morning train. Blood boils in his veins when he hears it pull away. Less time styling his hair and deciding what to wear. A second here, a second there, he might have made that train. Meanwhile, some poor guy is downtown doing time. Each minute dribbles by like molasses from a spoon. That's the thing about time, doesn't move in a straight line. Just ask Albert Einstein, he'll spell it out for you. Oh, give a little bit, take a little bit, move a little bit, shake a little bit. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's always going by. Give a little bit, take a little bit, move a little bit, shake a little bit. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's always going by. But I will ease my sorrow and cool my anger some other way. 'Cause time, the great revealer, is not the healer that everyone claims. Some folks hyperventilate if the sun comes up too late. For them we manipulate the passage of time. Spring forward, fall back, sleep schedules out of whack. Walk home in the pitch black for their peace of mind. Oh, give a little bit, take a little bit, move a little bit, shake a little bit. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's always going by. Give a little bit, take a little bit, move a little bit, shake a little bit. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's always going by. But I will ease my sorrow and cool my anger some other way. 'Cause time, the great revealer, is not the healer that everyone claims. By my side and things are pretty chill. Wish time could stand still, never has, never will. I'll bide my time until there's none left to bide. Oh, give a little bit, take a little bit, move a little bit, shake a little bit. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's always going by. Give a little bit, take a little bit, move a little bit, shake a little bit. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's always ticking, and I will ease my sorrow and cool my anger some other way. 'Cause time, the great revealer, is not the healer that everyone claims. Yes, I will ease my sorrow and cool my anger by some other means. 'Cause time, the great revealer, is a lousy healer from what I've seen.
That was One Way Pony Ride by Adrian West and performed by the Adrian West Trio, correct?
Correct.
All right. So, have you always had a band or been more solo? I noticed with your material, some material is sort of from one perspective, and as folks are going to learn, you play several different instruments. Has that always been your creative focus around music?
Pretty much. I guess I was in some bands in high school, college, and after college, and I really grew used to that energy, that collaboration, that multi-layered sound and rhythm and all that. So I really like that. When I started writing songs, I guess I did quite a bit of solo performing, just because that's what made sense. But most of the time I like playing with other people.
And did you start in music young?
Yeah, I started violin at the age of 4.
That's a tough instrument to be learning at 4.
That's why it's a good time to be learning it, because you can't really tell how much you suck. And you believe your parents when they say, "Oh, that sounds really nice, sweetie." And really, it sounds like a cat dying.
I tried for I think a few months in 6th grade and to learn viola, and my dad did not give the same kind of feedback. Let's
Oh,
say.
well, that's too bad.
And I wanted to play keyboard anyhow, so
Okay.
I was like, this isn't the I want to press button, make note, not figure out where the note is on this on this
Right.
string.
Right.
Yeah.
But I studied violin until I was 14, and then I got kind of tired of it, mostly tired of the classical music that I was playing. And so I switched to drums and played drums for a while in some bands, and then later decided I could try writing music and learned guitar, and then worked on my singing, and that kind of gets us to where we are now.
A lifelong journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got in here, I've got a little electric hand drum, got a couple keyboards, a couple theremins, guitar, bass, microphones for vocals, and I like to say I don't play any of them well, but together it all works out.
So you got the one-man band capability, basically.
Yeah, although because of Balanced Breakfast and Rock Lotto, I did Rock Lotto with a guy, Tim Lehane, who is now running the San Jose chapter, and he started producing me, and Tim is a real musician, and Tim loves the studio. I think in hindsight, I learned a lot about the recording studio and how to do things because I had to. So now that he's producing me, I find I'm more focused on what I really enjoy, which is the songwriting part.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah, that's I guess one of the things producers are there for, is to let you focus on the music and not twiddling knobs and playing with settings.
For a long time, I was like, okay, yeah, I know how to cut this EQ. Da, da, da. Now I hear him like, yeah, man, you just need to cut the sub frequency of blah, 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 until it sounds good. And I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna go figure out, make sure my my lyrics are in the right meter, and that rhyme that's a little dodgy. Get out the thesaurus and find a better rhyme.
Good. Yeah, that's how it should be.
On that last track, One Way Pony Ride, one moment was a standout to me, where you did the taking of time and how you were playing the section. I'm like, this man has some classical music background, because that's not just your average pop moment there. So I want to give you a shout out for that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if it comes across, but the theme of that song is sort of asking the question, does time heal all wounds? And I was sort of halfway into writing it when I decided to look into where that expression, time heals all wounds, actually came from. And I Googled it. And if you Google it, what you'll you probably won't find the source of it, but what you will find is a gazillion links to an interview that Rose Kennedy gave at some point. The interviewer had asked her, so Mrs. Kennedy, do you think that time heals wounds? And her answer was an unequivocal no. She said, at best, it covers the wound with scar tissue, which some might argue is the same as healing. But her point was, it's not a full heal. And that's kind of the point of that song. Time, the great revealer, is not the healer that everyone claims.
I felt this song conveyed that very well. And I have a friend who many years ago said to me, you know, there is no cure, there's only treatments. And it's a similar idea that, or when a terrible event happens, I hate how they'll be like, 50 people died at this event, as if everybody else is untouched. Who was there. And it's like, what about the probably larger pool set whose lives have ever physically or mentally been changed by this event? And we don't talk about them. We'll honor the dead, but not the wounded.
Interesting point. That's a very good point. It also makes me think of how often people are saying things like, oh, I can't wait till 2020 is over because 2020 has been a bad year. And the implication is that somehow everything will be better on, January 1st of 2021. And that's fine. But, I just worry that people actually think that way. It doesn't work that way. But
they think that calendars really exist.
But at the same time,
By the way, folks, January 1st is an accounting day, New Year. It has nothing to do with the solar cycle, the lunar cycle, anything. It's about closing out business accounts. So if you think closing out business accounts is going to save you, I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen.
Exactly. But at the same time, I don't want to depress the people who, have suffered some trauma and are hoping that it gets better over time. I mean, that does happen. It's just that it doesn't always happen as fully as some people claim. That's all.
Or on a specific date.
or on January 1st.
I'm going to be a little harsh. I'm going to say I think it comes from a certain... I'm going to say this word. It's a terrible word. Terrible, terrible laziness. It's like the calendar will do it for me. I don't have to do any work. I don't have to work on this. I don't have to change my behaviors. I don't have to fund the sciences that are going to pull this off. I don't have to honor the people who right now are working very long hours to make this happen. I can just ignore all that and just pretend that watching this piece of paper or this electronic device, that using this methodology that we have of the modern calendar will take care of it for me.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And that's so the first part of the chorus says, I will ease my sorrow and soothe my anger some other way. And so, because time, the great revealer, is not the healer that everyone claims. And so that first part, some other way, that's what you were just referring to. Like, yeah, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to change some of your behaviors, maybe change some of your interests, some of your habits. But again, sometimes it's harder than that. I don't want to belittle it. I don't want to diminish it. There you go.
Hope isn't a calendar, it's a culture.
Hope isn't a calendar, it's a culture. That's beautifully put, Joe. Did you just invent that? Did you just coin that?
Yeah, just listening to you guys. This is my round of Tourette's for tonight.
Hope isn't a calendar. Hope is a culture. It's not a calendar. Is that what you said?
Hope isn't a calendar. It is a culture.
Beautiful. That should be the chorus.
And Joe, make sure you put that down in your Sunday Live quote book, because I hope you recognize you come up with some amazing ones during this show, and I hope you're writing them down, or at least go back, watch the episodes, and find them, because you could sell a quote book just of those.
Joe, if you don't mind me asking, do you actually have Tourette's syndrome?
No,
Okay.
no, it's just my alibi and I'm sticking to it. I mean, I'll say something profound and then I'll regain consciousness and I'll think, where am I?
Okay. It's a good syndrome.
I can explain.
And on that note, I'm going to show we're talking about making music videos. Here is a music video called Safe Streets, and we'll be right back.
There's a ruckus in the alleyway. He turns around to see what's going down. There's a dirty little huckster peeling crack by the dumpster. He roughs him up, a couple of uppercuts to the gut'll be enough to make him think twice. It doesn't go like he planned. Now he got blood on his hands. So he lurks in the shadows, lays low, hoping no one will ever know. But the narcs are on him, and they're starting to close in. One night, doors kicked down, get your body on the ground now, or we'll take you out. And his heart is racing as they head down to the station. Tiny room at the precinct where Captain Samuel Flanagan says, now your ass is mine and I could make you do time. But there's more work to do, gonna make a deal with you. Here's a badge and a loaded Glock 22. You better clean up your hood or I'll lock you up for good.
Cal 5, can you check 2272 Danforth, be disturbance out front?
10-4 on that disturbance on Danforth. I'll go check it out.
He's out on the street now, he'll make your life unlivable. Civil rights don't mean jack to a scoundrel like that. But it's all good, cause the brotherhood got him covered in a cloud of immunity. And the streets are safer now that he got a taser.
Scout 5, can you return?
This is Scout 5. Suspect detained for resisting arrest. I'm gonna bring him in.
We are here with Adrian West, and that was the music video for Safe Streets. So how did that video come about?
Well, I suppose it came about after seeing one too many videos of police behaving in, totally inappropriate ways. There's just been more and more of those with time. And there's a lot in there. I mean, the main question that I found myself asking after watching a lot of these videos, and I'm not just talking about the ones where they kill someone. There's lots of them where they're just, maybe they don't like the way someone's talking to them, and they turn that into a confrontation, and then they arrest them. I just found myself wondering, well, it just seems like some police officers, not all, but some police officers, they feel like they demand total, complete respect and submissiveness. And if they don't get it, they're not just going to walk away. They're going to find a way to escalate it. And then things are going to get ugly. I wish that cops were better at de-escalation and didn't act like their lives were always in danger and that justifies them pulling out their weapon and all this stuff that you hear. So I just started asking myself, well, why do some of these people become police officers? Do they want to be in the de-escalation business, or do they have some other reason? Do they kind of want confrontation? I don't have the answer, but that's kind of what one of the things that the song is asking.
There's a joke about American cops and British cops, and it kind of goes like, what happens in Britain when someone doesn't stop? The British police yells again, stop, or else keep saying stop again. And I've asked law enforcement folks in the United States about how they're trained. And from multiple people I've gotten, well, we're trained the proper way, which is if you're going to unload your weapon, you killed the person. And I said, there seems like there's a wide range of options. The British are running around without a weapon in many cases, and they're finding out about investigating, de-escalating, apprehending by physically capturing a person. Now, we live in a country where any given person is potentially armed to military-grade weapons. So in Britain, you're not expecting someone to pull out a bazooka on you. Yeah. So chasing them down and capturing them is a little more reasonable expectation. Yeah. Because of the types of drug use in the United States and because of the type of weaponry that's freely available, I can see how you say that's just not an option. This whole range that you're talking about puts me and my life and my family all at risk. So it becomes this A-B thing. Either you completely acquiesce 100% so I can consider this situation under control, or it is moved to deadly force. And obviously racial bias, financial bias, et cetera, play a role in these decisions. But one part of it is it's an environment, right, that's been created. Yeah. So it's not a simple, we're going to get rid of this and it will solve everything. We're getting rid of this. It is an overall set of cultural practices that have come together, and people are being trained accordingly to that. They're being not just acting in a certain way, but being told this is the way to act.
Okay, but they're, in the situations that I've seen in videos, there seemed to be an option to, if you got to shoot them in the leg kind of thing, don't shoot to kill. But you're right. I mean, the chance that someone has a gun in this country makes it more complicated.
Yeah. And certainly there are cases like the videos that you and I have watched this last year where the behavior had no requirement to exist other than the internal psychology of that individual. That individual had a sadistic, murderous personality. Now, for folks that know me, I got my bachelor's in clinical psychology, so I won't mince words. You know, someone's psychology is someone's psychology, and you see someone and you see the look in their face. It's not like they're dealing with a life or death situation. I really wish I didn't have to do this, but I'm going to have to do this. When you can clearly see in that individual's face, and in several of these videos, individuals' faces, that they're obviously sociopathic disorder. You know, there's no conscience there. There's in one case that I saw an actual pleasure at knowing that you're killing someone, and B, that you're going to not be held accountable.
Yeah.
And so the whole
That's troubling.
sociopath thing is really, really tricky. There's a book that came out a few years ago called The Sociopath Test. And it gives sort of a list of criteria around this, and it did a lot of studies of sociopathic tendencies amongst the society and where it was in high rates and that sort of thing. And they found that we tend to elevate or promote into high leadership positions people who are sociopaths.
Yeah.
They have a lot of functional sociopaths, since they're not caring about people. They can be very good for businesses because they're just thinking about the business bottom line, and there's no emotional attachment to, hey, this layoff is going to affect a lot of people. And when you're sort of liberated from having a conscience and having that human connection, you can actually focus in these different ways.
Right. Well, clearly
tricky.
police departments and police academies need to get better at identifying that, and certainly not welcoming it or promoting it, but weeding it out. I'm curious, when you say you got to talk to law enforcement people about this, about their training, I'd like to hear more about that, because I feel like there's one of the problems is that there's pretty much a wall between the law enforcement community and the rest of society. I mean, we don't talk to each other. You know, they'll show up at events every now and then, community events, and they'll have their table and you can go and chat with them. But there's not enough outreach, I don't feel. And I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I think we could benefit from much more dialogue. And it's also the case that very often the police officers that work in a city don't live in that city. They live in a suburb and they travel in. All of that is bad news.
Yes.
So how did you talk to these officers?
Different occasions, different, it could be extended family members, it could be communities. Since when I worked in Marin, I worked for what was one of the largest employers in the county, and had a position of authority at that company, and I lived in town. And so I frequented the businesses and had connections with them, and we would talk about their relationship with the officers. And there was a large homeless encampment in the city park. And so these social issues were coming up all the time. Small enough community, everybody knows someone who knows someone. You know, my best friend's son is an officer in the next town over, all this sort of stuff. And I started finding that there was fairly consistent conversation going on between officers who were friends of family or in family or friends of friends. And I went, as a manager of training programs, I recognize this is there's a training component here. As a bachelor's in clinical psychology, I recognize there is a psychological problem here, and you have this confluence, and that's part of it, and that's where those conversations happen. And the number one thing I recommended to this Marin community was that they got a beat cop. And several business owners that I spoke to, we all agreed, went to the city council, and they hired a guy. And we said, look, the problem is exactly what you described. There was this complete detachment. They were just showing up for emergencies and mop up. There was no one kind of walking the street, saying hi to the business folks, saying hi to the folks who are living on the street in front of the shops, and building a bridge.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea of beat cop,
Yeah.
who works with the business owners and the community and all of the community present, it gets to know who's who and what's going on, is one of the most powerful tools that one of the most powerful tools we could leverage. And the second piece is because of the Afghan war and the Iraq war, tons and tons of military equipment came back from those wars and was sold to police departments. And guess what they also sold to police departments? The military training people who were out of work.
Right. And I think a lot of the cops are ex-military, which I think is also...
And, you know, hire a veteran. Hey, you were able to control the streets of Iraq. You can control our streets. And yet the training is different.
Yeah, of course. Exactly.
So, yeah. It's a real... It just adds a whole a new layer and dimension over the last 15 to 20 years that wasn't there before that.
Yeah, it's a real mess. And so, I mean, when people talk about defunding the police, or some people talk about abolishing, I mean, whatever direction that all goes, definitely, you know, trying to have some component of the law enforcement community that is in touch with the community that it's serving, that like a beat cop, like you say, and really is gets to know them, is visible, is helpful, not just when they're arresting someone or, like you say, mop up. I hope that's coming.
And you have to ask yourself with anything, folks listening to this show, what is something for? What is its purpose? And is it meeting that purpose? If safety and security is the purpose, is it meeting that purpose? And is it meeting in the most effective way for that community? And I think that seems to have gotten forgotten in this militarization culture.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm going to play another track here, and this is Coming Home Soon. That was Coming Home Soon by Adrian West. So Adrian said that he had started playing violin when he was 4 years old, then moved on to playing guitar and vocal lessons and some classical training. And one thing that struck me as I was setting up the show was just your range of musicality. Really was something that I don't see very often.
Well, thank you. Not wishing to toot my horn, but you left out drums, which was sort of a big, quite an important part. When I was playing drums in bands, that taught me a lot about rhythm, obviously, and that bleeds into all the other areas. I think sort of a sense of having independent rhythmic things going on, things that are independent of each other rhythmically, is important, I think, in music. So I don't know, the vocal might have a rhythm that is very independent from what the guitar is doing. That takes some skill, but it's really fun to listen to. And I feel like I learned that from playing drums. But anyway, thank you.
No. That's a very good point. And it's the glue that sticks together. I would say in a lot of my early work, it was the thing that was missing, and that I had all these independent elements happening, but there wasn't this sense of rhythmic glue. And, or I would impose a rigid rhythm. So when I first heard one of my favorite songs in the world is Robert Palmer's "Woke Up Laughing." When I first heard the remade version, I was like, what is this? What is going on? I know what I'm hearing isn't how I make music, and yet it's delicious and lovely, and I love the track. Let's try to count this out. And I realized it was two time signatures coexisting. And it hadn't occurred to me that that could happen. To me, time signatures were the rigid framework. You know, something's in 4/4, or it's in 6/8, or it's in 5, whatever. And once you lock that in the song, that's the song. And I started getting sheet music where, like maybe a Kate Bush song where she was changing keys, time signatures during the piece. I'm like, what? How can you do that? And this was 4/4 against 5/4. Which I guess is a particular style in the Caribbean where Mr. Palmer lived. And yeah, it creates, it's almost like it's like this shuffle, because it's like a waterfall rhythmically, because it's always going out of sync with itself and yet finding itself.
Right. Yeah, that's very cool when that happens. You're talking about Robert Palmer? Is that what you said? Yeah, I don't think I know that song, but I've written it down. I'll check it out afterwards. Woke Up Laughing.
Woke Up Laughing. There's two versions. There was one on his New Wave album in 1980 that he did with Gary Newman. And that had the idea. They had the tape loops running. But then he went on tour, and the live band learned the song and how to play it. And then they re-recorded the song as a live band. So I think the first one was maybe 80, 81, and the later one was maybe 87. So watch for that, because I think the live one with live instruments, it made it really gel, where the other one is like two tape loops playing out of sync with each other. So it's a little more mechanical versus natural sounding.
Oh, cool. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, he lived in the Caribbean, and outside of his, big hits, kind of more rock pop, he did a whole album of Caribbean music, or that there was an album that compiled his various Caribbean music songs into one piece. That I think it was called "Woke Up Laughing" too. Yeah, definitely check it out. So that last piece reminds me of that. It was making me think of Philip Glass. Yeah, just your sense of being able to layer things. And we've had other loop artists on the show. It strikes me that it's a real great advantage that very quickly and intuitively you're going to know where to come in with looping. Where I think with me it'd be more loose.
Um, yes. I mean, my use of looping, I mean, that song features it pretty prominently. I'm in fact using two different loopers at once. I'm using the big one with the lots of pedals, and there's another one that's just a single pedal one, and they're all going at the same time. And it took a while to get that all lined up and seamless. So it's featured pretty prominently in that song. I do looping when we play live, and I always try and use it only to embellish, never to drive the song or the writing process or the arrangement or anything like that. It's there to sort of act as an additional member of the band, adding one or two parts to thicken things up a bit. But I try and steer clear of the trap that I think some people get caught in, which is, oh, I've got a 4-bar loop going, I'm just going to play over that for 6 minutes. And I guess that's a song that I had an idea maybe for lyrics, and the idea I had was someone saying, I can't say I miss you, but I'm glad you're coming home soon. And that's sort of coming home soon. I can't say I miss you, but I'm glad you're coming home soon. It would have been something like that. And I decided, screw it. I'll just make it an instrumental.
I have some of those too, where I intended them to have a lyric, and for one reason or the other, they became an instrumental, and there was a certain point where I said, okay, that's where it's staying.
Yeah.
I totally relate. Well, this one does have lyrics, and this track is called In My Heart. And I'm going to have to mute you over on Zoom first, if I can find my cursor on the second computer. And here we go.
I've been dancing with loneliness, and I've held her as close as this, because I wanted to know what is in my heart. Oh, I wish you would talk to me. To know the colors you cannot see. Because on the inside love is watching fire. doesn't know a thing about. The way it'll all turn out. Because then she would see and find her way to me.
That was In My Heart by the Adrian West Trio. We're here interviewing Adrian West himself. One thing that strikes me again about your music is maybe because you're a multi-instrumentalist, but I think there's something more there. You cross genres in what you do, and you're not just okay, this is a violin, this is a guitar, but in like your chord structures. I think some of the pieces we heard earlier on were more folk rock piece, and here you had elements of jazz, some interesting chord changes. Did that just not come naturally to you, or is it because of artists that you loved? Oh, I have you muted. Sorry. I have complete control of the airwaves. All right, I've clicked ask to unmute. If you could go ahead and you have to click a little button. I don't know why I can't do it, but hey,
There we go.
hey.
Well, that's just as well because I was sitting there mumbling, trying to decide how to answer that. So you didn't miss much. Well, here's the thing. I mean, I'm not really a big fan of jazz. I'm not really a big fan of classical. But I have always been a fan of those bands that could kind of cross into those, like the rock bands that would delve into that. Earliest memory, Sting. I don't know if you remember, Sting had sort of a, I think Dream of the Blue Turtles, and he had a whole tour with jazz musicians, and that really grabbed me. Dave Matthews Band has elements of jazz. So I like jazz showing up in rock music. And I think probably that applies to classical as well. Not sure I have examples at the moment of that, but I like that. And then I think I've always, I kind of write my music mentally. I often hear chords and then figure out how to play them. And that is helpful, I think. It opens things up. I am not caught in the trap of, well, I know this chord and I know that chord and I know that chord, so I'm going to build a song around those chords I know. That's not how it happens. And I think that might turn into what sounds like genre bending, but to me, it's just part of the creative process.
I like how there's a timelessness to the sort of ballad effect. Listening to this last song, it's reminded of early 1970s group called Bread with David Gates, and it sounded like that right down to the lyrics. It was very timeless. The intro reminded me a little of some of Neil Young's early slow work. So I love the timeless quality to it.
Yeah, I was thinking about a little bit of Alan Parsons' project, actually. Time has lots of reverb, but if you stripped away the tons of 70s reverb off that song, it would have some similar qualities.
Yeah, Pink Floyd is a good example. I mean, they
Pink
have
Floyd, yeah.
their keyboardist, I think, came from a jazz background, and boy, does it show up every now and then in the most beautiful ways.
Yeah, I like you said, I'm more of a pop person. I don't have a massive classical collection. I sang in classical choir from 4th grade into my 2nd year of university, sung in a jazz choir through high school, did a little bit of jazz at university, but mainly choral singing. So, a lot of Mozart, a lot of the from the a little bit of Renaissance, a fair amount of classical, a fair amount of romantic, and a little bit of 20th century performance. And like you, though, my main draw to was like the Beatles and ABBA and pop music and Al Stewart, Alan Parsons Project, Pink Floyd, a little later than that, David Bowie, Gary Newman. And so most of my vinyl collection was pop music. I'd have, okay, here's my one Vivaldi record. Okay, everybody has to have the Four Seasons in their collection. But it definitely, by singing this music day in, week out, it definitely informed me. And bands that have those extra qualities in them definitely attract me.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
And I would even put ABBA in that category because if you've listened to a lot of ABBA, you realize these guys wrote music, and the album would have a Hawaiian song, it would have a Spanish song, it would have and they were doing this obviously for business purposes. They were like, okay, we need to find a hit somewhere in the world, and they were like a crank out the music factory, and so they would record the songs in okay, we're gonna record this song in Swedish, Spanish, English, and what's our next market. So that, I think, as an output of that strategic thinking music business wise, the albums ended up with all these different flavors. And, obviously the Beatles went from being pretty much in one flavor. In the second half of their career, they went every possible direction. So the White Album was my favorite Beatles album because every track was completely different.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you mentioned that as having been a marketing strategy by ABBA, but other people will say, well, actually, that's a real marketing blunder, right? Like if you move around too much and you don't have a identifiable sound, and then that'll hurt you. I don't care about that, but it's funny that it can work both ways.
I think because they kept themselves to a pop sound.
Yeah.
They recorded in the same studio with the same band.
Yeah.
That when it would go from Chiquita into Dancing Queen, it didn't strike you as a weird shift that you just went from like Spanish guitar to disco. Yeah. Somehow it all fit because the gals singing, they had the same kind of vocal quality. Right. So you can pull it off, and then sometimes it's more jarring.
Yeah,
I certainly have some albums in my collection.
So I think that's a real accomplishment, and it's a real great quality in a band. And you're right. I mean, it's the songs are very different, but they're all written by the same people and they're performed by the same people, and that gives it cohesion. And I think that's a great thing. I like to be surprised by a band, and I like to be taken on a journey, and I guess I'm trying to do that. Like if I'm starting to write a song and I think, this sounds too much like this other song, or sounds too much like this other song of mine, or sounds too much like this other song of some other famous band, I don't pursue it. I want it to be different. Don't always succeed, but that's the goal.
So when I was making references before the show of or this song kind of reminds me of so and so and so and so. Did that put you off from? I'm not gonna do more stuff like that.
Not at all. You said the band Fred.
Oh, Joe was saying bread.
Oh, Bread.
Bread.
No, it doesn't put me off at all. But generally speaking, I don't know the comparison. Well, not always, but often I don't know the comparisons because I didn't really branch out that much in my listening. But that the only thing it does is sometimes I worry, oh shit, did I actually accidentally rip off a song? I keep expecting that to happen.
I think you are diverse enough that if you did what all artists do throughout history, which is to look at each other's work and to refold that into a new context, you will find that that you've just naturally taken it in a different direction. Shifted the chords and whatnot, and know how many David statues are there. Did someone rip off David? Is the original Babylonian writer in Jewish captivity in modern day, what's now modern day Iraq, going to rise from the grave and say, "How dare you make sculptures of that guy I wrote about?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yet we've gotten to this point because if you in the 90s. Disney pushed to pass a lot of laws that changed copyright. And now if you do something that someone might think of in the future based on that, you can be taken to court.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's the copyright thing's got insane. And I this is as a person with a record label who helps artists release music, I think it's gone way too far. I think there has been some pulling back. I don't think George Harrison would have lost the case for My Sweet Lord. For folks that don't know, he lost a case for that song, which was his biggest song ever, by the writer or producer of the Shangri-Las on He's So Fine. And they claimed that he had subconsciously picked up several notes from the melody.
Stairway to Heaven is also in court again, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was just settled.
Oh, okay.
There's a phrase, in America, anyone can sue anyone for anything. It's just about how much money you have to pay your lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I remember hearing Paul McCartney talk about the song Yesterday. He woke up with that song in his head and started singing it to his friends and bandmates, saying, "So what is that?" And he thought he had heard it. He thought it was a popular song. And everyone said, "No, I've never heard that before. It sounds like it must be yours." I found that really fascinating.
It's a great case. I've only had that happen to me once. I was stopped in a gas station. I was filling up the car with gas, and all of a sudden the song came into my head. Most of the time, I'm working at something structurally. I'm putting together beats, maybe the drum part first, or I might be working on a chord progression that will spark me to do something. Have you ever had that just happen where you're like, I just woke up with this song, or this song came to me?
Actually, yes, quite often. Not the whole song, but a chord progression, maybe a melody, definitely the rhythm. And I've trained myself to, it might be when I wake up in the morning, it might be as I'm falling asleep at night, but either way, I've trained myself to get the phone out. I have a little 4-track program on there called J4T, I think. And I'm able, if I can get myself awake to do it, to record the key elements of it, so that I can look at it later. And that has been the genesis of many a song. The tricky thing is doing it without waking up my wife, who's sleeping next to me.
I have had that happen a couple of times where I'm in the bed and she's like, "Honey, what's up?" I'm like, "Oh, nothing."
Exactly.
Unfortunately for me, I never think to go back to look for them. It occurs to me to record them, but I don't think maybe one or two bits or pieces have come out of the phone, but most of them, they just go in the phone, they get archived, and I never come back. I find I typically produce the music first, and what became a thing for about 7 years is I produce the music first, do a mix down, and then fire up my karaoke making software. And I found if I sat in front of Microsoft Word, nothing would come. But if I was in the karaoke software, and it's just the same thing, you get the music and the typing, but with the music playing and the typing in one application, for some reason, I could work.
You mean for coming up with lyrics? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so I do all my scratch lyrics while listening to the music in this karaoke making software. And then I do scratch karaoke, bounce it down, and I would do karaoke DJing in the evenings, or I knew people who would let me play originals, and I would bring them a bunch of other rare music and kind of put it in there, sneak my track in with that, and I'd perform it that night and see how people reacted, and then go home and rewrite it. So that became my sort of rapid writing and performing loop. So that's far more common. That's probably 80-90% of what I do.
Interesting. Well, it's too bad that you don't go back and listen to the stuff that you've recorded on your phone. I wonder, I mean, have you ever gone back and listened to it, or are you saying never?
5%.
Because what sometimes happens, it has happened to me in the past, is you go back and listen to it, and if it was, in my experience, if it was just a single track and I tried to capture my idea in a single track, then often I'd go back and listen to it and I'd say, well, I remember that was a good idea, but I can't tell from this what that idea was. This is just too bare bones. But if I'm able to get multiple tracks down, then the idea really does survive. And so I wonder if that's something you want to think about.
Yeah, some multiple layers. Yeah, cool. Okay, I'll take that into the mental process. I think I simply don't think. I think to record, but I don't think to retrieve on the phone for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I did do one lyric. I was walking down the street, and a lyric for a song came to me. I did the whole lyric because I was listening to the instrumental, and I'm like, great, this is fantastic. And I went back and I opened up the phone, and I'd renamed it and everything, and the file was gone. Oh. And I think that soured me on it. And I was like, okay, fine. This is impermanent. I don't know.
Bummer.
Well, here's a slightly different style of one of your tracks, and this is called Wallbanger. That was Wallbanger by the Adrian West Trio. We are here on Sunday Live interviewing Adrian West, talking about his music and his history and his songwriting practices. Thank you, Adrian, for pointing out about the strobe. It's been bugging me that I can't turn off that feature because I just have this thing on random. And when the strobe comes on, it drives me nuts. And I hadn't thought about the risk to people, so thank you for bringing that up. I am going to dig into Google and figure out how to change that setting.
Okay.
So how did that collaboration come about?
Well, let's see. I mean, that song was on my first album, which is called Chameleons and Butterflies. It was one of the first things I ever recorded, actually. I guess, what year was that? 2017 or 2018. I wanted to make it into a dance video, and actually my wife had been taking some hip-hop dance classes from this guy in Oakland named Corey Action, who runs he teaches dance, and he has a production company called Motherload Entertainment. And I asked him if he'd be interested, and he said yeah, and it was just a wonderful experience. I mean, he's amazing. He brought together all these people, all these dancers from all these different disciplines, and in one day shot all of that footage and then put it all together. It was a real treat to work with him and all of those dancers. It happened mostly on the grounds of Oakland Tech High School, on Broadway Avenue. And that's pretty much it. And I just want to mention one little thing. You've been saying Adrian West Trio, and sometimes we play as a trio, but sometimes we're a quartet. And so just want to say that, sometimes we're a band, sometimes we're a quartet. It's not always a trio. And in this case, it was basically that's all violin. Well, and there's some mandolin, and there's me playing V drums. So that was actually kind of a solo endeavor. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so you're in Oakland. And for folks that watch the show, know it's one of my favorite cities in the world. And Joe's up there in Berkeley on the hills looking down. And I've lived all over the San Francisco Bay Area, and now live outside of Seattle. And so I know all the areas you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
When I lived in the East Bay for 7 years of the time I was in the East Bay, which was I don't know, maybe over 15 years, I rode a bicycle. And when you ride a bicycle, and originally I was first landed in Fruitvale in the artist loft community, and eventually ended up in Emeryville for, I think, at least 7 years. And when you ride a bicycle and you learn every pothole, you learn every rut in the road, and you have a personal, very deep personal attachment. It's Sunday morning, you wake up early, you get on your bike, and you discover a restaurant or a piece of architecture, and it's quiet, no one's around, and it's you and the pigeons and the sunlight, and then the city starts to come awake. And when I moved to Oakland, Oakland was just starting a renaissance. Well, hadn't started the renaissance yet. And so it was more rough industrial. And during the time I was there was pockets of artist communities who were doing their own thing. And by the time I left, those things had become events that, rather than the police chasing us, were city-run events. So they grew from this very niche community. Say, of artists, we threw the hay bales in the street to block off the street so we could have our little artist moment. And the police would come and we'd have to remove the hay bale. They'd tell us, don't do that. And, drinks were $1 and it was a bucket full of PBR. And, 10 years later, it was, road closures and food trucks. And so I think I just luckily got to have that experience in Oakland of that range and time. So very, very fond memories of Oakland.
Oh, yeah. No, I like Oakland a lot. I like the diversity. And it's vibrant. I mean, there's so many artists who have moved here who used to live in San Francisco, that it's become much more of the cultural center of the area than San Francisco.
Yeah, I think it already had started during my time there and continued. And then over the last certainly 5 to 7 years, when the big software companies started coming in San Francisco and building skyscrapers to themselves, I'd go into San Francisco and I didn't feel any of that artist community left. It felt like, it was great. I love a microbrewery with a fancy food bar, but I felt like if I wasn't in my 20s or 30s, I no longer belonged in San Francisco.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, I mean, when I go there, sometimes I feel like I'm seeing more young people than I see in Oakland, partly because in order to deal with the small amount of space that you're going to get to live in if you live in San Francisco, you probably have to be young. Because you haven't become used to more space than that yet, so you can handle it.
Yeah, San Francisco definitely became well-paid youth environment with all the new high-rise buildings, with all the new high-density condos, townhouses, and Salesforce moving in and building the Eye of Sauron in the middle of the city. Bring in little Las Vegas to SF. It definitely shifted things, and I felt like Oakland, which is a much larger city and has such a range of not only cultures, but economic zones. I describe, maybe down by the airport, you're talking fairly poverty. You get down in the industrial areas, and there's bands performing in warehouses and who are up to nefarious things. And then there's, low income folks that are trying to keep their neighborhood together, and the transition that all the way up to Montclair, very upper end, on the border of one of the richest places in San Francisco Bay Area. So folks come down from the hills to visit the flatlands, so they bring their money with them. So there's this crossover and infusion, and there's a lot of conversation between groups, both social, economic, ethnic, hobby in Oakland that just is great. And folks go out. So in the South Bay, quite often people stay to their clique or they don't go out. It's suburban living. And in other areas, like when I moved from Oakland to Marin, very clique. When on the street, people knew who fit to their level of the society, and they only spoke to them. And people who weren't in their group would defer to that group. It was very, very notable. And when you go from somewhere as diverse and in some ways integrated as Oakland to somewhere that's in many ways very segregated like Marin, it was quite a shock.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, sometimes when I find myself in places where everyone is white and rich, I feel very uncomfortable. And that's got a lot to do with having spent some time in Oakland.
Yeah, and I found, and when you go, the way you talk and interact with people, and you don't have these sort of compartmentalizations. If you're acting that way and the people around you aren't acting that way, you get to see an even more intense mirror of that.
Yeah.
It's funny. I worked in Marin County for about better part of 10 years in sort of basically the Hamptons of the Headlands. And the people in Marin County, it's like the Great Gatsby is alive and well. There's a huge facade going on. But at very least with Marin, you have the middle class people and middle upper class of middle age, even younger. They're more practiced of it because when I worked in a luxury resort lodge, you had people coming up from the peninsula with some of the big tech startup companies holding conferences there, and they carry themselves very much like new money, shall we say. They were ill practiced in the ways of being wealthy. But yeah, Marin County definitely has its, shall we say, culture. I can't air quote that hard enough, but yeah, it makes the East Bay very, very favorable.
So, folks, we are getting along the show here, and we've not done a mystic moment. So I'm going to take a brief break to give folks this weekly piece we call the Mystic Moment, and then we'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sunday Live, and gracing us with your presence this week. If you watch the show on a regular basis, you know I have a segment called Mystic Moment, where I encourage listeners to try new things in their lives, to open doors that they didn't even know were right there, and to allow their lives to be enriched. You're not going to be into everything, but you should at least be aware of those worlds, because you never know when the thing that you're seeking is on the other side of that door. It can be scary. The other side of the door is the unknown, unseen, the different, the unusual. And you may feel that in your life there's something that you wish was present in your life. Maybe you know what it is. Maybe you don't know what it is. Maybe you think you know what it is. But that's because of everything that you know is all you know. The unknown is a big place. It can be scary. And it can also be very, very rewarding, because the unknown is always bigger than what you know. It's always a part of a greater universe. So I challenge you to do something this week, a Google search, anything, on something you don't know about. I just read up today about T-cell blood transfusion, solid tumor therapy. Why? I'll go into a number of reasons of interest, but science interests me. So I'm always looking up medical science stuff, the latest information on how the pyramids were built, and all such of stuff. I'm constantly absorbing new information. And every once in a while, I'll find something like some cultures don't have a word for hand in their language. The arm and the hand is one thing. And I can't imagine thinking not having a separate word for arm and hand. Changes my perspective about myself and the world when you think about language, what words you have that other people might not have, and what words don't you have that other people have. Because those create unknown spaces, things that you don't even know in your mind because you don't have the word for it. Go find the word for it. And that's your challenge this week. All right, folks. We are going into the after party with Adrian West. Stick around. So, Adrian, this is the after party where normally we get into the deeper conversations, but from like minute one, I think you and I just like dove right in the deep. You deal with some big subjects about culture, personal expectations, responsibility. And I don't just mean that on a political level, but each individual and their responsibilities and engagements. So it's kind of an unusual episode in that way, because usually we start off with kind of superficial, more fun stuff, and then we get down to the after party, and that's when the gloves come off, and the abstract video of you yodeling that I found on the internet gets shown, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe we should use this time to be superficial.
Oh, I don't know. Well, where's your superficial track? You didn't send me that one.
No, we can just, I could ask you how much you paid for that pair of headphones. We could make up superficial stuff.
So, which particular tapioca do you like?
Which brand of looper do you think was? Well, I mean, maybe we don't need to do an after party. I mean, we have been talking for over 2 hours now, if we include the setup. So, is there anything else that you really want to talk about?
Well, and I think you and I have had a lot on that. Let's give Joe a couple more minutes with his insights, and then we can go ahead and wrap up.
Right. I'm not the greatest fan of tapioca pudding. It's been chocolate pudding, instant chocolate pudding for the bachelor and me. For a guy on the go, it's got to be instant. Stop trying to be shallow. It's not working. The after party where secrets are revealed, shallow and otherwise. I was a roadie for the FBI.
Well, Joe, for the record, I like tapioca and chocolate pudding.
Yeah.
That's because you're a communist. I gotta say, this is I sound like a broken record, but this is a great venue for letting our hair down and unloosening our ties, and getting to know each other and getting to know the music business and the underground music business as well. And I like how the things that we're talking about, it seemed to be off subject matter, but it all ties in. Your first couple of songs, writing about the police brutality and whatnot, the things that are sometimes not relevant to each other are quite relevant. They're very parallel, and that's why what makes the music so important. Music is a vehicle for telling of the times. You're telling a story, and you're telling a story of the times. It could be contemporary times. It could be personal things. It could be political things. The pulse of today, the atmosphere of the world right now, and that is expressed through song. Because what we're doing, we're telling stories. We're telling our stories, and we're telling the story of today. And we're transmitting it here online. And that's what's great. We have several resources coming together, several causes coming together, funneling together in this wonderful bottleneck that we can then shoot out like a laser. And it's magnificent.
Nicely put. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Any final words, Adrian? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I try and sometimes address in my songs some larger societal issues, social justice issues, and lately often environmental, concern for the environment. Um, I think I think that stuff's important, and it's a nice challenge to talk about that stuff in a way that is still poetic, and it blends nicely with the music and doesn't just sound preachy. So I enjoy that challenge. I am finding that lately, like the past couple of songs have steered towards concern for the environment, and I hope that I can steer away from that for a little while, just because it's getting to be a bit of a broken record kind of message. But it certainly is a big concern. I'm so glad that Biden won this election, and that we will undoubtedly be rejoining the Paris Climate Accord and reversing a lot of the deregulation that Trump did. I mean, that has been very stressful, just knowing that we were going backwards. So hopefully I'll be celebrating that in some upcoming songs.
January 21st is going to be like waking up in rehab, trying to detoxify from the past 4 years. But I'm looking forward.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and it was a big mistake that was made, and we're going to pay for it for a while.
All the more reasons for venues like music, however much like a broken record, to tell this story so that it's not forgotten. If we forget this history, we're doomed to repeat it, and that's where music comes in.
Yeah, and it's sad that the pandemic is preventing so many people from enjoying live music right now.
Which only goes to sharpen our resources here, for example.
I would be very interested in seeing how this space develops post enough vaccines and live shows coming back online. I was watching a documentary on interview with Terry Gilliam for his 80th birthday, and he was talking about how even though theaters have been shuttered, he sits at home with his wife watching Netflix, and he's like, that theater experience just can't compare. So in his mind, that as soon as it's possible, people will return to theaters. And I think the same will be true of live shows. And where I'm fascinated to see what happens is in between. Did we gain something during this period that now we get to integrate with live shows or complement live shows? Is there what's going to happen in the middle of these things? Or are we going to run towards something and then away from something? And I think to a certain degree, a lot of people who are getting entertainment online will start getting it live again. And I don't know. I just, whether or not, like, now that everybody has a TV channel, are we going to be able to do more like live show promotion? Like maybe even this show, Sunday Live, then now becomes a promotional vehicle for people doing live shows. Right now we're just booking people. Maybe we move to where we only book people who have a live show coming up, so that there's a tie-in.
Yeah, that sounds like a cool way to leverage this when this whole thing is over. I don't know.
This broadcast, the webcast, shows like this, and this one in particular, I think it'd be used in conjunction with live shows or upcoming live performances when they come back, much the same way all my nightclubbing friends would convene at a cafe and plot the night's courses, have a plan for the evening before running off to the nightclub that was happening that night. We did it at Cafe Nuvo in San Anselmo. We did it at Alcocole in Berkeley. We'd meet, and that was our way station, our bus stop, shall we say, before we launched off our base camp for nightlife, before we went to the Oakland Metro House or Glass House or Cats Club or DNA Lounge. And this broadcast here, will not only serve for that, people to gather here and come, okay, what's going to happen the next month or this week, but also to learn about upcoming shows in the first place and up and coming artists in the first place.
Yeah.
So and so, here's my work, and if you're interested, I will be at these locations, and we could follow you to those locations. But this place is a great wellspring for the renaissance, if you will, of nightlife. And for the record, I think nightlife and live performances might have an edge over theater. I love the cinema; it's a great experience, but everybody gets together to be quiet and watches a screen versus everybody getting together and communing together for a live show. We have the audience interaction, not only with the recording artist on stage, but with one another, bonding over said recording artist on stage. And so cinema can't quite compete with nightlife. So when this is all over and open venues start coming, people are going to be so hungry for one another and for the public and for human contact that the venues are going to do very well. And you might see a resurge in live acts and maybe even a shortage of good musicians because the demand. And that's a first world problem to have.
That's nice. That's a nice problem to have. Yeah, I'm also hoping that because the musicians have been stuck at home practicing, a lot of the musicians I talk to, so what have you been doing to keep busy? Oh, just shedding, practicing. I'm kind of half expecting to see a real flourish of talent come from that. And I think some people have also talked about finding that they've been able to be very creative during this time. So yeah, I think it'll come roaring back to life as soon as it's allowed to.
I can't wait. I for one can't wait. The resurgence, the venting of the creative forces.
Yeah.
It'll be great. This is a dark time right now, but when things come to light, when we get over the pandemic, we start going out, it's gonna be such a wonderful time. It's like the ending of prohibition, except for music.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice way. Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to that.
Here we are in our speakeasies as we speak.
That's right. And I like your idea of a show like this, sort of profiling what's coming up in the next week or two. That's a really fun idea.
And I like it. It's almost a kind of a dreading responsibility in a way, but it's a burden we should be happy to take on.
All right, Joe, you're responsible for getting the list, and we'll have to create some criteria like no big names, and maybe like, oh, I don't know. We typically are doing like Bay Area, Seattle, and LA, although we had Kazakhstan 2 weeks ago. And then maybe like, yeah, these are two interesting artists, or I don't know if we go up to 5 or whatever, in your area doing gigs. You should check them out. And then we could show like, rather than an episode just being on one artist, we could maybe show like one video from each artist, or even get multiple people on Zoom rather than one-way interviews, and then have them all, pitch their show and tell us a little bit about what it's about and, why you should go to Hotel Utah and see their gig.
Yeah.
All I'll need is a +1 on the guest list. That's all I ask.
The Joe Price.
Yeah. Touche.
Well,
+1.
What was that, Joe?
+1. That's all.
You +1. I see. All right. We have to back you up there. And I think that's a great idea. Well, Adrian, you probably have figured out that Joe and I probably could speak to midnight. Mm-hmm. And there have been some of these episodes, I think with Ed, it's like 4 hours of recording because we were having such a good time. And he's a buddy of mine from high school, and he's calling in from England and trying to keep quiet so he didn't wake up his wife and kids. And we had a grand old time. So, what was that?
Wow.
Yeah, it was right. He's like, I gotta go. I gotta get some. He's like, no, we're having such a great conversation. Let's keep going and talk about my Gilgamesh project. And so do feel free to raise your hand and say uncle and say, it's been over 2 hours, folks. Time to tap out.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I'm thinking.
Okay, we have
I've enjoyed it a lot, though. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And I do want to let you know, we have like 3 other videos here. And if you're working on some more stuff in the future in 2021, love to have you back on the show and show some more stuff.
All
Yes,
right.
please. Yes, please.
I'd be delighted. Thank you for that invitation. It's been fun talking to both of you.
Absolutely welcome. And see you online, and looking forward to hearing some of what's coming down the pipe.
All right. I'll keep you posted.
Adrian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian, for being on the show today.
Thank you both. Take care.
Hey, everybody. This is Caleb at Sunday Live. We were here with Adrian West talking about his musical projects over the years and showing some of his work. We did not get to all the videos. We were having such a great conversation and time. We will have a follow-up episode in 2021 and show you some additional work. For now, we're going to clock out. I asked Adrian to stay on the Zoom chat so we can have a wrap up. But for the rest of us, we're going to stop the stream. And thank you so much for watching. Ciao. If you'd like to find out more about my music, look at Caleb Duarte on Facebook. I have 3 bands. They are all on Facebook. That is the Caleb Band, Audio Terrorist, and Queer Blue. There are Bandcamp pages to listen to music and YouTube channels to listen to the music with videos. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, and have a great week.